Hello, this is Hector Vladimir, living off the grid in the city radio show. This is an episode titled Sustainable Homes. It is a show that encompasses most of the technologies and the methods and ideas in one small summary and one packaged show called Sustainable Homes. All of the ideas, technologies, and methods that will be briefly described here will have to do with sustainable homes. Self-explanatory title there. First, we'll begin with insulation. We'll describe insulation and we'll see what it's for, how can it be used, how can it benefit you to be off the grid, to be completely self-sustained when it comes to building or using a home, a self-sustainable home. And then after I've described all of these technologies, all of these methods, uses, materials, I will go ahead and put it together and describe how a home can be and work self-sustainably, green, completely off the grid. And this is completely possible for most people here in the United States and for a very large amount of people also worldwide, especially considering a lifetime of opportunity, meaning a full adult lifetime. I dare to say that most people would have the opportunity to, before too late, they would have an opportunity to achieve this dream if this is what they would like, being completely
sustainable.
And at the same time, this is not only for you, this is not only for your benefit, this is for the benefit of humankind, mankind, for the benefit of the planet, for the benefit of many generations into the future, for the benefit of the environment. You will be, in all effects, rendering obsolete all of the hazardous and harmful industries that are causing all kinds of havoc when it comes to the environment, conflict, war, abuse. Talking about the coal industry, oil and gas industry, gold industry, the silver, precious metals industries. You will be rendering, if not all, at least majority of these industries obsolete and repugnant gradually, eventually. So we'll begin with insulation. Insulation is the material, space, barrier you put in between your environment and an unwanted environment. For example, a hot environment, cold environment, dry, too wet, whatever it may be. An insulating barrier or insulation is basically just that separation between you and that environment that you're trying to avoid or trying to at least make a little better, make a little more comfortable. For example, a wall from an average home here in the southeast US is basically wood and drywall, not too often, brick, and maybe some mortar for the exterior walls. But for the most part, it's just wood and drywall and plastic siding, vinyl siding. And this is not a great insulation material. There's also one more there, fiberglass or other fabric or material for insulation that is usually put in the exterior walls. If you've been in the average home here in the United States, you've seen how they're constructed, you've seen how they're built. They're put up in a week, using a small crew. And that tells me that they're not very durable for one. They don't use top quality, long-lasting materials. They're made very cheaply and very rapidly, and again, not using the best suited materials for each section of the house. For example, the exterior walls, I just described what materials are usually used for insulation, and they are not that effective. They do provide some sort of insulation, but they do require large amounts of energy to keep the home comfortable. Because to begin with, they don't use these materials and methods and more insulation and better insulating materials because they got in their minds already. They are assuming that you will be hooking onto the grid and using tons of energy to keep the home cool, to keep it warm in the winter, cool in the summer. And they're just assuming that you will be having your air conditioner on 24/7 during the summer and your heating on 24/7 during the winter. So they're not going to spend the extra funds it would take, the extra effort, the extra materials, and the better methods it would take for the home to have better installation, thus better energy efficiency. Their main concern when they're building the home is cost saving, so they can maximize their profits. And that is a very real flaw, not only with the monetary system, but also with the way homes are built, with the culture around it, and with the interests and pressure and influence of the power companies that basically drive some of the growth in the new home construction. And also the people's mindsets. They control very much people's opinions when it comes to energy. Energy companies and industries spend many of their resources, perhaps millions of dollars per year in ensuring that people view them as necessary, conserving, caring for not only them but also the environment. They make sure, especially the most polluting industries in the world are the ones that spend the most money in advertisement and mind control, as I call it, publicity, to make sure that people view them as clean, caring, investing in clean energies, in protection of the environment, etc., when in fact they are the ones doing most of the damage environmentally. Installation can be a deal breaker when it comes to efficiency. That should be the first thing you look at if you build or if you modify a home, or if you're going to buy an existing home. Look at the installation, look at the amount of installation, the quality of the installation, not only in the walls, exterior walls, interior walls, but also in the roof, in between the roof and the ceiling, or the attic area. If there is such thing as an attic, make sure that the attic is well insulated with quality insulation. If this is a choice you can make, if you can afford to make that choice, a lot of times people are unable. The energy efficiency is probably the least looked at feature of a home. Even if it's not the first time, people rarely, if ever, inquire about the efficiency of a home when they're buying. And the first thing they look at is how it looks. Does the home look nice, pretty, big, size, location? Looking at the location is not a bad thing. They look at the location not for energy efficiency or in an area where it's going to be shaded or with wind, airflow to cool it during the summer, and will it have enough sunshine to warm it up in the winter. They look at location as far as good shopping areas around. Are the neighbors okay? Are the neighbors the right type of people, the right culture? Good schools around. This is what people mostly look at, from my experience, when they are out shopping for homes. And I'm guilty of that because I was a victim for a long time of this erroneous and lost culture that is of consumerism and just blind, non-informed, ignorant consumerism of things that may make you look more affluent. This is what people look at when they're going to purchase something. Very sadly and very disturbingly, they don't look at things because of their utility and their advantages. Make sure insulation is something that you consider, not only when you build, if you build, but when you buy. You can look at the place that you are living in right now. If you're planning to make any kind of improvements, any kind of modifications, insulation is definitely something you want to consider. Again, because it's going to save you tons of energy in the long run, especially, and will help you get off the grid if that is your goal. It could at the very least help you save energy. Moving on to another part of your self-sufficient home, a home that is hopeful to be self-sufficient one day, if not right off the bat. Roofing. Roofing and ceiling are two things you want to be looking at for new homes, purchasing a home, or your existing home structure. Even if you want to build, whether it's yourself or a construction group, you want to look at the roof. Especially, this changes depending on the area where you live, the climate, the environment, the temperatures, the amount of rain, the amount of sun you get, the amount of snow, if any, again, how cold, hot it gets. If you live in a very warm area, such as desert areas, such as southern United States, Southern California, South Texas, or even here in the Southeast, you may want to consider a white or light colored roof. Color matters quite a bit. The color, we're assuming this is a durable color, preferably something that is infused into the material via treatment, high quality paint. Like shingles, for example, lighter shingles, they put sand or some sort of light colored material, granules on it to make it white. White reflects most of the light radiation away from it, bounces out, and only a very minute amount of radiation filters through, meaning that it heats up a lot less than black or dark colored roofing. For example, shingles. If you've ever done a dark roof in the summertime, as I've done, you will notice how hot it could get up there. I'm talking hot enough to melt your shoe soles like happened to me. And this is here in the Southeast, where it's not extremely hot like it is in some of the southwest parts of the United States, let alone in other parts of the world like North Mexico, Middle East, Arabian Peninsula, Saharan Africa, desert areas. It could get so hot that the color of the roof should be taken into consideration. Again, you want it to be light if it's a hot area, for the heat to remain out of your home. of your attic and you want it dark in a cold place like Canada and the northern hemisphere latitudes, Europe and Russia are, and also the south, the far south latitudes. You want darker colored roofs in those areas, of course, to absorb as much radiation, thus heat, as possible, because you want that heat, the very small amount of heat that makes it to those areas. You want to retain that heat for your home. Insulation is not as necessary when you have these types of roofs that retain heat. For example, if you live in a hot area like here in the southeast, you want to have a light roof. That way you don't have to have as much insulation inside of your attic if you have one. You can have a little less insulation. More is never bad, but less can save you money. If you have a light roof on a hot area, you're going to be saving not only on insulation costs, but also in cooling costs. You may not have to cool your home as much, or you may not have to cool your home at all, using electricity, for example, or any other method of cooling you may need, whether it be fans, some sort of other type of refrigeration. The cooling costs could be substantially decreased, even to the point where zero cooling costs are incurred. This would be optimal and very preferable, where you don't have to have an AC unit at all. If you could build a home, and this is a perfect area here in the southeast, the southeastern states, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, South Carolina, even the Virginias, North Carolina, Mississippi, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and East Texas. All of these states here in the southeast are in an area where you barely need any sort of heating and cooling if you build your home with sustainability and energy efficiency in mind, and cooling and shading and all of these things that you can do to have your home as energy efficient as possible. The thing is that it goes against the grain. It goes against what the power companies want. It goes against the wishes and aspirations of the power companies. They do not want you to be self-sufficient. Naturally, they're out of a job, they're out of an income, they're out of a profit if this were to happen. Even if it's just small scale or a minority of the population that adopts this lifestyle where they are off the grid, they would still lose, even if it's a small percentage of the population. And it's a threat to them. It's something that they would not like spreading out. They would not like to get around the idea of people getting off the grid, because it is a clear and present danger to their subsistence. Clearly, they do not want this. And again, there are many reports, official, credible reports about companies planning, very diligently investigating, and even charging people getting off the grid. They're making sure municipalities, cities, states, counties have rules in their books about people attempting to get off the grid, making them, in many instances, illegal. This is because they claim it's a health issue and it's a safety issue, but in reality, let's be honest, it's about the bottom line. It's about them protecting their pockets, protecting their assets, power, their livelihood. Understandably, they are corporations, which means corporal beings, in theory, organisms that look out for themselves. It's a collection of people, in simple terms, that are looking out for their jobs. They're protecting their job security. How can you blame them? Someone's or a group of people's little jobs are not worth wasting away the planet, wasting away lives, wasting away whole communities, societies, whole animal habitats, plant habitats, and sacrificing those is just not worth it. A little job here and there is not worth throwing away what some think is basically our whole livelihood, our whole planet. And even if it's not that, even if it's not a worldwide, planet-wide problem, do we really want to pollute whole rivers, whole lakes, decimate plant and animal habitats, decimate the health of people? It's not worth it. It's not worth one life to protect a whole corporation. A whole corporation's worth of profits and jobs and this and that. It's not worth one single life, one single human life. That is my opinion, and I'm sure the opinion of countless others. Moving on to food. Food is something that is extremely important for someone to have if they want to be off the grid. Not only to eat on a day-to-day basis, but also to have the feeling of independence, to be confident enough that you will have something available, whatever may happen with the economy, whatever may happen naturally with the environment, any sort of emergency situation, catastrophe, natural disaster, you will sleep better at night, will be a more confident and secure person, and proud also that you have food available, that you know you will have food available even in the worst of circumstances. As I just mentioned, natural disasters such as floods, hurricanes, earthquakes, tornadoes, periods of extreme drought, dry periods of no rain, periods of turmoil, social, economic. There are so many ways that catastrophes and disasters could occur. Fires, civil war, international war, terror attacks, biological attacks. It doesn't have to be Armageddon. It doesn't have to be the end of days, something so unlikely like another 9/11 attack or anything like that. I mean, it could be just a simple flash flood that affects your neighborhood directly, takes away a couple of homes in your city, your neighborhood, and floods the only bridge into your town. As something as simple as that is very likely in many areas, could cut you off, cut your city, your town, your community off from society, from supplies, effectively for weeks on end. It has happened. It will happen. It is only a matter of time. It depends on the place, of course, on the likelihood. But even on the unlikeliest of places, some things that nobody thought would happen have happened, and even several times in a lifetime. So don't think for a second that you're completely safe from all sorts of disasters. If not natural, man-made crises could occur any day now, regardless of how stable and how peaceful it may be right at this moment. Tomorrow it may be chaos beyond belief. And you want to be ready. You want to have food first and foremost. Of course, after water, but we'll cover food first. Food production, it is something that is quite a skill that needs to be mastered before crisis strikes. Food production is not terribly difficult, but it does require practice and information. Just attempt to grow fruit, vegetables on your own, and you will find out the first time your vegetables spoil and your fruits and other plants don't grow, dry up, or die out, you will soon find out that food growing is not as easy as it may look. It's not as straightforward as just planting a seed. You may never see that seed bear fruit if you don't know how to, when to, and where to grow food. Information is the number one ingredient. Patience, physical, mental skill, the know-how. You also need the resources. Of course, you can't grow mangoes or pineapples in the northern tundra in North Canada, of course, unless you have a greenhouse and other very expensive and intricate equipment to go with it. For the most part, you cannot grow those things in the northern countries, but you can grow a vast array of other things: potato, berries, strawberries, etc. So you got to have the information. You have to know what to grow, when to grow it, where to grow it, again, how to. So I would recommend you gain all that information if living off the grid is something that you want to do. Depending where you live, if you live in very warm climate, tropical areas, you are lucky in this sense. For the most part, you can grow just about anything there is to grow. All you got to do is learn how to grow it, what to use. And even in these areas, it does take skill to grow food in any kind of repetitive and successful way. You still need to have information and skill to grow food. It is a lot easier than in other countries where it's cooler, less energy, less sun. But it is, however, difficult, and you need to be prepared. There are many things you can grow, especially here in the southeast U.S. You can grow potatoes, you can grow vegetables, tomatoes, peppers, onions. You can grow a lot of fruits, peach, corn, peanuts. You can grow watermelon, cantaloupes, a wide array of things. When you move further south to Florida, you can grow just about anything else, including those that I just mentioned: mango, orange, grapefruit, apples, strawberry, avocado. Texas, South Louisiana, South Mississippi, South Alabama. You can grow a very wide range of things. Look them up. I'm not going to list them all. You can use land in your backyard. You can use land from friends and or family. You can use even public land, even though this is not quite recommended, but you can go to a public little spot somewhere, find your little secret spot. You don't have to claim it for you. You don't have to plant a flag or fence it in. And go plant you a couple of trees, a couple of plants, a couple of vegetable plants. And, assuming this is a safe area, that is not fenced in, that is not highly protected, that is not highly watched, you can go out and plant your trees and go pick some fruit, pick some nuts, whatever vegetables it may be that you planted. It could be close to your home. It could be a little apart from your home. Who said that you are not able to do this? This is something that you can completely do. Although I highly recommend that you plant in your own land if at all possible. Just to continue on this topic of sustainable homes, food growing. Again, you can grow food in your own land, someone else's land with their permission, or in public land in a little bit of secrecy, if that's a route you would like to take. Not recommended, but it is a possibility. It is an option for many people. You can grow a variety of foods. You can use your piece of land in your backyard, front yard, side yard. You can do hydroponic farming, which is basically growing food indoors in a greenhouse for the most part, most commonly. And you can grow not necessarily in dirt, but you can grow in water. You can grow in other mediums such as cotton. You can grow vegetables, for example, in sand or any kind of other synthetic medium. You can find out a lot more details about how to do this, but this is a possibility where you can grow, like, for example, inside of containers, jars, structures. You can place plants inside of a medium and grow food using sunlight, direct sunlight, through a greenhouse or out in the open, or you can also use artificial lighting. You can grow hydroponically, stacked up. It could be a single layer, but it's mainly in an indoor environment, controlled environment where the climate's temperature, lighting, heat, all that is controlled. But for the most part, it's easier if you live in an area where this is a possibility. It's easier outside. It is much more natural, and it does take a lot less skill and knowledge to do. You can build your greenhouse, especially if you live in a cooler climate. Build a greenhouse with wood and plexiglass or flexible crystalline panels. They could be also glass panels, panes. Build your own greenhouse. It doesn't have to be anything big or anything you have to be able to go into standing up. It could be something small. It could be something you can open up lids, something you can open up the top part and tend your plants that way, water them, whatever, and close them back up. It could be one pane up top, several. It doesn't have to be airtight. Look at online how to build your greenhouse. They have many different models you can choose from and different sizes for different budgets, different skill levels. Look that up. I recommend it, especially if you live in a cooler place. It is highly useful to be able to grow year-round or even in the cooler months. Privacy for self-sustainable homes takes a new level of priority, especially if you live in a city limit, county limit, where you have neighbors, where you have officials potentially checking on you, law enforcement. I'm not by any means, in any sense of the word, encouraging any illegal behavior or illegal practices, but living off the grid, as I have mentioned in a previous show, calls attention of people that may not be your friends, may not like you, may not want you to be doing what you're doing, may feel threatened. They may feel uncomfortable at the very least, may feel that you're doing something that may affect them in one way or another. However unfair this feeling may be, it's a reality. Neighbors will be curious. They will ask questions at many instances. And if you're not the friendliest of people, if you don't talk to your neighbors regularly, they may grow suspicious and even report you, even lie about what you're doing. They may make up their own mind about what you're doing. They may find an explanation and make up their own stories about what you're doing. And you may be reported. You may be brought up to the attention of the authorities, the city council, the municipality authorities and personnel, who may also not be accepting to what you're doing. Even if it's completely legal, you may want to provide some privacy for your off-the-grid home. You may want to plant trees, hedges, brushes, shrubs, anything that could create a little bit of barrier between you and pesky neighbors, pesky city officials, or community leaders, or law enforcement. Because they're people too, they make their own prejudgments. They prejudge you. They may feel threatened again. They may think that you're weird or somehow trying to do something illegal when you may not be. So you may want to protect yourself to avoid all this harassment to avoid any kind of inconvenience to you and your loved ones, if any. You can do the next best thing from planting trees all around you, again providing that barrier for privacy. You can do fencing, whether it's chain link, metal, or wood fencing. You can go a little fancier and do brick, even concrete, cinder blocks, if you're able. Remember that many areas, many municipalities require some sort of permit for you to build any kind of structure, especially when it's going to be as permanent as brick or concrete, and reinforced concrete, steel, metal. You may want to check with your municipalities and make sure that you comply with whatever permitting may be required for building those. Privacy fences and privacy perimeters are very useful for those that are completely off the grid. This is also depending on the area you live. You may be very welcome to live off the grid. You may live in a off-the-grid community where you need no privacy. But if you live in an average community where everyone around you will be hooked to the grid, you may not want to publicly advertise your goals, your methods, your structures. They may be weird, they may be threatening and unsightly to others that may not think like you. So why inconvenience yourself and bring yourself even risk by shouting out to the world what you're doing? You may want to consider protecting yourself. Make sure that the area where you live allows such practice legally. There are plenty of areas where living off the grid is illegal. I believe Florida and other states have ruled it illegal to be off the grid. Sadly and disturbingly enough, I'm not sure to what extent this is the case, but there are several credible reports that this is the case, that many states, cities, municipalities don't allow you to get off the grid. Their grounds for it are, for the most part, safety concerns, health concerns, etc. There is very likely a economic interest concern there hidden as well. Of course, it's not as advertised. It's not at all advertised. Interests are, of course, very likely involved, such as power companies, gas and oil, electric power companies of the conventional type. They very much support such laws and regulations where being off the grid is completely illegal. Of course, using as a pretext health and safety, especially if you have children in the home. They love piggybacking on the excuse of children being in the home, not being old enough to be exposed or be victims of your actions, especially dealing with health concerns. So privacy may be something that you want to do if you go off the grid, do build or buy or modify your home to be self-sustainable to 100% or near 100%. Again, fence, hedge trees, plants, etc. are options you can consider for that. Another area I want to cover today, water collection. Water collection is of utmost importance when you plan to be off the grid for obvious reasons. You can go without food for a week, perhaps more. You cannot go without water for more than a day or two. I'm not going to discuss air, oxygen, which you cannot go without for more than maybe a few minutes, because obviously air is free, at the very least at the moment. Water, however, is not free for most individuals. Potable, drinkable water is not free. You have to get it delivered to your home, whether it's by pipes, truck, water service as far as bottled water, but you still have to pay for it. The minute you don't, your water is disconnected, it's cut off, whether it's, again, city water through pipes or delivery. The minute you don't pay for it, it will be cut off. You don't want to be in that situation, especially for the ones I mentioned, where emergencies, crises, catastrophes, natural disasters may take place. Very likely water will be one of the first things that will be affected. Your water supply. Through drought, lack thereof water becomes contaminated, or even when there is too much water, again being contaminated, like flooding, which may interrupt your usable, drinkable, potable water. You want to have secure, safe, clean water available in case of any of these circumstances that may arise, which again are not remote, are not that hard for them to arise. Think about it. When was the last time, for those of you living here in these southern states, even in the continental United States, when was the last time a catastrophe occurred in your state? Consider your whole state, not even the whole country. When was the last time a catastrophe occurred? Natural disaster, crises, natural crises, or even a man-made crisis. It may not be that far. It may be within recent memory. It may be just a few clicks away, searching your favorite search engine within the past decade or so. But it's not that remote. It doesn't take that many unlikely circumstances for a disaster to occur. So keep that in mind, please. Water could be collected several ways. Rainwater could be collected using several methods. Look them up. Water catching systems are bound on the internet, both for sale and for construction. You can use your roof as a water collecting system. Your roof with gutters, which gutters are basically a channel for water to be collected and channeled and directed a certain way. And something as simple as a big drum or bucket or a collection of buckets could be used to collect this rainwater. Of course, the rainwater that you collect may be dirty by the time it makes it to your container, but it is, however, treatable and filterable. You can filter rainwater relatively easy and drink it. If you collect rainwater in a, for example, pool, above ground pool, if you have one of those, or if you get one of those, it doesn't have to be big. It could be one of those inflatable pools. Stretch it out, inflate it out in the backyard right before a storm, collect rainwater, and for the most part, that water could be drank straight off if that container is clean enough. Yes, I know a lot of cities have air pollution where they recommend you not drink the rainwater because it may have collected on its way down a lot of polluted particles, and you may not want to drink that water right off. But in many instances, it may be safe even then, even in polluted cities, polluted areas. It may be safe enough for you to use at the very least during an emergency situation. Nobody will tell me that rainwater that may have collected a few particles from the air, a very small percentage of that water traveling down miles downstream from pipes and tanks that have been sitting there for ages. You're not going to tell me that that water is going to be a lot more safe to drink and consumed, and not to mention the chemicals that water has been treated with. You're not going to tell me that water is going to be safer to drink than rainwater collected in a clean container directly from the rain. Rainwater is among the cleanest water available. My opinion is that rainwater is among the cleanest, safest water. Again, many ways to collect rainwater, many technologies, many methods. Look them up. I'm not going to detail them. I'll just give you a few broad ideas about how to collect rainwater. But there are many methods, many models of technologies you can build using simple, readily available items, materials, and things such as wood, lumber, cloth, large plastic or rubber materials, such as materials that you can get from inflatable toys, inflatable pools. You can have a bunch of buckets, let's say those 5-gallon buckets that you can buy at the hardware store, Walmart, Target, any of those stores. You can buy buckets for less than $5 a piece. Let's say you want to invest $100 at $5 a piece. That's 20 buckets laid out in the yard. When it rains, you can collect at least, in a good storm, long-lasting storm, you can collect at least half a bucket or 2.5 gallons per bucket and start with that. That is a good amount of water that could last you about a week if you ration it right during an emergency. And if you do that a couple of times, you could have hundreds of gallons of water within a few month period, a couple of month, 2 or 3 month period. If you live in an area like here in the Southeast that rains regularly throughout the summer and spring and sometimes all throughout winter, that's something to consider. You come up with your own way to collect rainwater. Unfortunately, some areas, some counties, cities consider rainwater as their private resource. As ridiculous as it sounds, and as stupid and backward, primitive as it may be, to claim that rainwater is yours, I don't care how big and how powerful you think you may be, you had nothing to do with the creation, with that process, with the bringing about of that process. That rainwater falls from the sky, from the clouds, you having nothing to do with it. I don't care what king or kingdom you may be part of. If it falls on me, on my person, on my private property, I'm going to collect it. I don't care what you say as a city, as a state, as a king, as a president, as a government. And I am saying this out loud in this radio show. Please come get me. I am catching rainwater. I don't care what you put in the books, what you do. I will always catch rainwater. I don't care what rule or regulation you come up with justifying that rainwater is your resource. tough luck. I will not obey those rules, and I encourage anyone and everyone in every part of the world to disobey such law, to basically cause change, cause some reflection in those that make the laws, that you're being completely ridiculous. If rain falls on me, on my little head, that you tell me that I'm not allowed to open up my mouth and drink it. So basically, you're telling me that I'm not allowed to just stick my tongue out and catch all the raindrops I could? You have got to be kidding me if you actually believe that anyone, especially me, will abide by such law. Moving on, energy. Most people don't live in high wind areas, so wind energy is not accessible for most people, not only because of the resource is not as prevalent and abundant as the sun, but also because the technology is so much more expensive and hard and more challenging to set up and make work. So I won't waste much time discussing wind. Wind is an option for many people, many areas. If you are in such areas, look it up, find out about it. If you live in the plains of the United States and the Midwest, the northern states, such as the Canada bordering states of the United States, the Northwest, where sun is not as abundant as it is here in the South, Southeast, Southwest, it may be a better option for those areas. But again, even those areas could take more advantage from the sun than the wind, especially if you have a limited budget. Photovoltaics could be placed on your roof, could be placed on your yard, on your boat, on your RV, on your truck, trailer, on a temporary structure. It could be just laid out on the ground, on your yard, taken back out. It's very flexible as far as its uses. And also physically, they have flexible panels now where you can just carry them out. They don't have a hard, heavy frame. You can just carry them out, lay them out, connect them up, charge your system, and roll them back up at the end of the day, stick them back in the house, trailer. Photovoltaics are a very attractive option for many people, perhaps most areas here in the United States. Look it up, check it out, consider it, get it if you want to get off the grid. That is your prime way, principal way to get off the grid. Remain within budget. This show is primarily for those with a limited budget. If you have an unlimited budget, you may not be listening to me right now. You may be already off the grid. If that is what you wish, this show is mainly for those looking for ideas, looking for some support, looking for some inspiration to get off the grid. You can also use wood to provide for energy for your home. When I say energy, I don't just talk about electrical energy, such as photovoltaics. You can use wood to heat up your home, to cook, to provide light, etc. You can use coal for about the same stuff, same things, heat, light, cooking, and paper and charcoal as well. You can go with geothermal. Again, I mentioned this briefly in an earlier show. Geothermal is expensive. Geothermal takes a lot of resources, funds, time, skill, planning to do. It is not available in all areas. You may live in an area where you may have water just a couple of feet below you. You may have bedrock just a couple of meters below you. You may not have the funds to do it. You need to live in an area where there's considerable warmth underneath you. You may live in a very cold place. If it is an option, you should, and I encourage you to find out about it, look it up, consider it, get it done if you are able to do it. That is one way to heat up your home, cool your home, maintain a very comfortable temperature in your home year-round. And it is not as difficult and as expensive and as painful as many make it sound, and as you may think it is, so investigate. You can also look into construction of your own home. I touched upon this earlier, but I'm going to go a little deeper. Constructing your own home may be a daunting undertaking. You need resources, money, especially here in the monetary system of the United States. You need time that you may not have. You may have a full-time job that's demanding. You need space, land, you need rights. A lot of people don't have rights. Sadly enough, a lot of people are here. A lot of people are oppressed. A lot of people are what may seem or feel like second-class citizens, where they are denied a lot of perks and advantages and rights that many other people are automatically given. Again, sadly enough, a lot of this is based on background, race, creed, color, upbringing, pedigree. Disturbingly enough, this is many times the case. But if you're able to construct your own home by some way, by any way, then by all means. If that's what you want to do and you're able to do it, please do it. By all means, you can construct your own home and make it completely off the grid, self-sustainable, green, right off the bat. That is probably the best way to do it, to build it from scratch. Modifying an existing home is very costly, very challenging at times, depending on where you live, what the construction of your home is. You may live in a very old home. You may live in a home in an area where changing it up substantially is not an option. Building from scratch is very, very attractive as far as cost is concerned, as far as your options. You're basically starting from a clean canvas where you can build to suit. You can build to your liking, and not only to your liking, but also to the best design. 1, available for your area. 2, possible. And 3, you can choose a design that is as efficient as possible for that area, for that environment. You could choose to build a dome, one of the strongest, perhaps the strongest shapes for a dwelling structure. Or you could choose to build a home made with recycled materials such as tires, beer or soda cans, even bottles. There are many, many options out there. Look them up. You can build using trailer containers, those big rig containers that a lot of times break or they become unusable for some reason. They're disposed of a lot of times by big trucking companies or shipping companies, and you may be able to get your hands on one of them. If you do your homework, do your search, and find a good opportunity, you may be able to get a hold of them. They're made of very durable metal, including steel, and they can be modified. Most of the time, it's not a very good idea to use them right off the bat like that without any kind of modification, but you can modify them to where you can insulate it and make it a comfortable place to live. A very cheap option at times, and you can even get your hands on 2 or more of those, link them together, and make a very comfortable, larger multi-room home with them. Stories and plans about these models and other models of container homes are on the internet. Look them up, search them. That is a very viable option, a cost-effective option for those trying to get off the grid, especially if you have land or are looking to purchase your own land, perhaps away from pesky city and community officials. You can choose an area, if you're able, that's quite private. You can park your trailer and away you go, building, modifying, and living off the grid. I'm not going to go into many of the details of how to and what to do with these. I want to leave that up to the listener to look those up. I'm just throwing out ideas. That's all I have time for. You can also come up with your own designs using logs. You can use mounds, and believe it or not, you can use caves to live off the grid. You need not live above ground. You could very well live underground, especially in hills, mountains. Of course, given that you are able to do these things and it's legal and it's feasible for you and it's not life-threatening or unsafe to do. Also consider other people, consider your family, consider your friends, and how that's going to impact those people. It may not be an option if you are married with a family. It may not be an option if you have close family members that need your attention, or if you have a job in a certain area that you cannot afford to leave. It may not be an option for you to go to the mountains and live in a cave. It may not be an option to dig a hole in your grandparents' home in their backyard and live in a hole. It may not be safe to live in a hole. It may be in a low-lying area where it floods. So think about all those factors, especially environmental factors and safety factors, and take them into consideration to make a good, sound, safe, and judgmental decision. Be smart about it. For the sake of living off the grid, don't just go crazy and put yourself or others in danger or in harm or in a very inconvenient situation. I will leave it at that for now. Again, living off the grid in the city. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening and or watching. Have a good day.